Ready to start whenever you're ready, Mike.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for that. Thanks for the introduction. Yes, it is recording, and welcome everybody, and thanks for spending an hour and a half. We won't go beyond an hour and a half today. You might see the number of slides there are. I believe you can see sort of my presentation. Don't worry, that's not all for today. I'll get through as much as I can, and appreciate it. Some of you may have been on the previous session I did, so I'm going to just reiterate some of those comments and slides that previously, so you might recognise those, because I think the slides went out as well after the session last time. So I'll cover some of that, but there's some new material as well, and hopefully you'll find it useful. And yeah, if you can, if you're able to interact during the session, then that's good as well. So thanks for that. So yes, that's me, Mike Wilson. Just a little bit about me, not too much, and then we'll move on, just to give it into context for the ones who may not have been there on the previous session. So yeah, I do lecture at York St John University. I'm in usually every Tuesday, so I do innovation and entrepreneurship, and they also do teach on the MSc course and the MBA courses for strategic human resource management as well, so I can tell you a little bit more about that. I also do some operational and departmental management work at Blackburn College, which is near to myself. I'm from Accrington, by the way. That's where I am right now. And I also mentor on an innovation visa program, which is people who are looking to set businesses up within the UK or from overseas, and we review the business plans and see whether it's different enough, whether it's innovative enough, and there's a potential growth and to employ people within the UK. I'm also what we call lead consultant at Anthem Engagement. That's all about employee engagement. So I do a lot of work around the people side of businesses, and we do employee engagement surveys, and I do a lot of work initially to set that up, and also after feeding the results back. And I'm chairman of a company in Blackburn called Simply Donuts, and we make donuts, lots of them every day. And we actually win quite a lot of awards. I've just had an email this morning saying we've been put in for yet another award, so that's good. And I've worked over the last sort of 32 years or so. I've worked with about 4,000 businesses, including many social enterprises as well, at various levels. So that's a little bit about me. I'm always interested in people's hobbies and interests and what they do outside work, because going back to sort of my people side of things, it's interesting to find out what people interests and hobbies are, and the skills and knowledge and experience they gain from that, and do they bring that into the workplace, and are the managers aware of what they do outside work, and could they bring some of that skills and knowledge internally as well. So I always think that's quite useful to understand what people do as well. But that's another thing. So yes, my music is my thing. I'm also a cricket umpire, and I like cycling whenever I possibly can. So on to today, what we're looking to cover. This is sort of the agenda for the next 3 sessions. Yeah, it's definitely commercialisation strategies, how you can be more commercial, or how you can increase that commerciality. Market analysis. Let's look at the actual markets that you're in. Customer profiling, specifically what customers are you targeting, what do you know about them, the demographics, the buying habits, the behaviours, planning techniques, lots of stuff around specific business models or strategic planning tools. And you may have seen some of these previously. I bet there's one or two maybe you haven't, but some of these you will have seen, but I'll just reiterate those because they are incredibly useful when you come into plan. Yeah, commercial opportunities, engaging stakeholders, that's a massive thing. It's understanding who your stakeholders are and the impact they have on you, and vice versa. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. And then creating value. So having identified who the customers are, how do we create value so that we can provide them with what they need, and to generate income wherever possible. So that's what we're going to cover. Yeah, takeaways. What I'd like to do, obviously, it's interactive, and hopefully you'll be taking away some templates and some plans and various things as we move along over the next sort of 3 sessions. Yeah, practical tools, models and frameworks, goal settings, planning techniques, as I mentioned previously, looking about measuring your performance, what does success look like, and how do you achieve that success. Organizational improvement throughout, and again back to action planning techniques, and really, so if you like, at some point, some self-assessment tools. I've not put any in for today, but if that's something that you're quite interested in, about gauging, that's behavioral traits or entrepreneurial abilities, or just character traits, there's plenty of assessment tools that we can look at as well. So I've lots of stuff, and what I wouldn't mind at the end really is when I sort of when we're approaching the end is if there's anything that you want me to specifically focus on over the next 2 sessions, then we can do that as well. So that's a little bit of a menu to some extent that I've put up there. We've covered some of those things as well, but what I didn't talk about really, I suppose, was reflective practice about how you analyze what you've previously done, the impact you have on others, the emotional intelligence side. So I can cover some of that if you're not familiar with that, and I know some of you will be, but that's a possibility as well that we can talk about that. And from an entrepreneurial perspective about setting businesses up, looking at opportunities, and something called lean startup methodologies, which looks at the viability and pivoting and minimum viable product that's getting something out there when it may not be quite ready. So we can talk about that as well. So have a think about that, and again, once I've finished, if there's anything specific that you want me to include for the next couple of weeks, the next couple of sessions, we can do that. So everybody all right so far? That's setting the scene. We'll get on to the content in a second, but is everybody all right with that so far? If I don't hear anything, I'll just assume you are.
Yes, super, thank you, great.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Good stuff. Okay, we'll move on then. But again, if there's any questions or anything along as we move along, then just put your hand up either virtually or in real. I think James is around to pick anything up, shouldn't it? And Kate, if should and Emma, it should anything if I miss anything as I'm doing the presentation. So I just thought I'd open up with that. So in terms of moving things forward from an organisation perspective, there's a couple of things really, isn't there? It's either carry on doing what you're doing, and that might be successful, or it's about changing something. So in order to analyse where you are and to move things forward, what do we need to do? Are we okay as we are, or do we need to change? And if you did need to change, what is that likely to be? So what sort of things could we possibly change within our organisation? So just put a few things down. It'd be interesting your thoughts on this. So why would something need to change? What are the signs you think? We're running an organisation, we're relatively successful, but change we need to implement change. So what might that be? So from a social enterprise perspective, declining social impact. So the reason we set the business up or the organisation in the first place, that's declining. Financial strain, and that's absolutely common throughout. So what is it that's causing us to have that financial strain? We get some customer feedback, and again, I'm a big fan of getting feedback, whether it be customers, stakeholders, suppliers, employees, getting some feedback. And is that telling us that there's something not quite right? We do need to change. Challenges internally within the organisation, and that might be customers, suppliers, it might be employees, but things need to be workflow planning, for example. Things need to change. Things that are happening externally that we may not have control of, but it's certainly having an effect on us. And it's interesting, we've got a new government now, and we just had the budget, and there's lots of things happening that are going to impact in many ways on organisations. So what's the external environment that we're aware of that's going to impact the way we do things? We've got a growth target, but that's stagnating. We're not growing as quickly as we possibly can. Again, feedback from our investors or stakeholders, people who are involved in the business, stakeholder disengagement. And I say I'll do a little bit on stakeholders and how you would identify who they are and whether they are disengaged or not. With technology, it's the tech that we had initially isn't working. It's not talking to each other, so it's making us less effective than we could be. Challenge with mission alignment, the reason we set up in the first place, and there's some challenges around those. I can discuss those. We've had internal audits and evaluations, so the regulatory side of things is telling us that there's a need for us to change. We're not as performing as well as we should be. People are leaving, or there's low morale, and I do a lot of work around employee engagement and what makes people engaged and not engaged, and I can introduce some of that, not necessarily today, but in future if that's something you want to have a look at. Competitive pressure, so people are coming into our marketplace, and that's causing some pressures for us with losing customers or just the impact of new competitors coming along. Inefficient operations and processes, so we're not as efficient as we should be or could be. And yeah, poor communications and coordinations, and internally we're not communicating again as well as we could be. And when we do employee engagement surveys and operational surveys, communication always crops up. So how do people want it to be communicated to, and is that effective? So those are potential where you would spot, right, we need to change. There's something happening that's we're not as effective or as we should be. So what could you change? Having identified some of the things that would make that change, what potentially could they be? And apologies, some of these slides are quite heavy, but I do that to some extent because obviously you're going to get copies of these anyway, and we're recording, so it's just a bit of a checklist after, which hopefully will help. However, so yeah, so what could you change? You know, adapt your impact strategy. We're there to make a massive impact on our beneficiaries. So is that working or is that not? And how do we assess the impact of that? You could change that. Yeah, financial stability, looking at the financial side of things, review spending and seek new funding opportunities. So these are some things we could do. Build stronger community relationships. I mean, imagine as a social enterprise, you'll have fairly strong relationships anyway, but it's how you can build stronger relationships and what actions need to do to ensure that happens. Strengthen marketing and brand awareness. And I know we've got some brand experts in the room today, so I won't go too much into that. But again, it's, you know, thinking about your brand and how you can increase that and enhance that. And again, marketing. What are we currently doing to promote ourselves, and is that effective? And I can do a little bit on that. And again, capacity building, making sure that we've got the people, the resources to ensure that we can move things forward. Product and service development, again, commercialisation, looking at product and service development. And I'll talk a little bit more about the innovation side of things and how we generate new ideas and where those ideas are going to come from. The workflow process, are we always efficient internally as we should be? Supply chains, again, how often do we review who our suppliers are? And again, back to the stakeholder thing. Strengthen our stakeholder and investor relationships. Improve customer and beneficiary experience. So thinking about what experience do we give to our beneficiaries and to our customers. And it's not necessarily just about the product or services, it's how we deliver that and what's the experience and the value that people get from what we do. A big one on vision, mission, culture, purpose. So again, is it a case of reviewing that, and is that fit for purpose now? And talent management. How do we keep hold of our good talent? How do we nurture talent? Whether that's our employees or people that work with us, our board, our volunteers. But it's about that talent engagement, training, development, and ensuring that that they're motivated, happy, and productive in their workplace. And anything else? Is there anything else that anybody is thinking in terms of things that you could change to improve the way that you do things currently? While I just have a drink. No, that's fine. I shall move on. Let me just. Okay, super. So thinking about where we are now, so that's some of the things that may need to be changed, but I'm just focusing really on, so what are your current objectives? So and how do you plan for those objectives? So thinking about, so excuse me, so objectives for this year might be, yeah, we want to make more money, we want to be more efficient, again back to that productivity, want to expand more sites, more people, bigger impact than we're making now, diversify or pivot, a word that cropped up quite a lot during COVID, but it's, you know, are we going down the right routes? If not, then let's stop that immediately and let's go on to and do something differently. Is it survival mode we're in, or anything else that your objectives are? So it's thinking about what are we trying to achieve, and that certainly for the next 12 months, but do you go beyond that? So what's your planning process? And what is it that you're looking to achieve certainly within the next 12 months or so? So again, focusing in on that. And again, once you're through, I'm just interested in terms of your planning processes itself. How do you arrive at the objectives? Who's involved in your planning process, and what information do you use to get that? So is it, you know, trends, looking at internally and externally what's happening? And again, I'm going to go through a few tools that will help with that. So what do you currently use, and who's involved? Do you involve the whole organisation, or is it just the senior managers, just yourself, to arrive at the objective? What are we trying to achieve, and how are we going to do that? So always focusing on that first, because that's key in terms of everything else that you do has got to be focused in on that, on the objectives that you're trying to achieve. So, and again, and actually, when we're doing our employee engagement surveys, we always ask people, are you aware of what your organisation is trying to achieve? Because if the employees and the stakeholders aren't aware, then particularly what their input is and how their work on a day-to-day basis affects the way that you achieve your objectives. If people are not aware of that, then they're not going to be engaged, and not see that bigger picture. So it's always interesting. So we always ask that question: what is it that your organisation is trying to achieve? And second question: so how are you doing? Are you meeting, or are you on track to meet those objectives? And how do you know? How do you find out? Is it sort of state of the nations? Is it through emails? Is it through one-to-one meetings? So what's the communication method that tells people what objectives are they trying to achieve, and are they on track to meet them? And also, really, what are the benefits of hitting that? So yeah, we've got our targets, we know what we're trying to achieve. What are the benefits of hitting them, and what will happen if we don't? So it's looking at that, the impact side of things. We do meet them, we don't meet them. So it's fully understanding the impact and consequences of not achieving those objectives. So, excuse me. So this is a slide that I used last time, and I quite like this slide because it helps make people focus a little bit more on specific areas of the business that you might want to focus on when you're doing your planning for next year. So the people side of things. So again, workforce planning. I do a lot of work around workforce planning in terms of what talent have we got, what have we got now, what are we going to need in future, and where's the gap, and how do we fill that gap? And I know, particularly if anybody's looking to recruit at the moment, it is quite, I think we've got a recruitment agency in the room, so that's good. But I know that there's quite a lot of difficulty in recruiting the right talent and the right skills currently. I know there's a skill shortage. So, what do you do as an organisation to make yourselves more attractive to candidates, the type of candidates that you're looking to attract? So that's an interesting one as well. So, but in terms of the people, are you looking to employ more people? What do you do to develop managers, leaders, volunteers, trustees, the board? So it's thinking about training, development, and recruitment, and managing and maintaining the people that you've got to take you forward. So it's that gap. What have we got now? What do we need, and where is that gap, and how we're going to fill that? What's that going to look like? Resources other than people. So again, looking at planning, what the other assets you've got, the premises, the software, the computers, anything else that's not people, that's a resource. Money being another one. We do some work at York St John. It's called strategic. It's strategic resource planning, and it's a module that's split into two. One is the people side of thing, which I deliver, and the other one is money, the financial side of things. So those are the resources. So it's thinking about, do you need to plan around the resources? Customers and beneficiaries. So looking at, when you're planning, do you retaining existing customers or beneficiaries, or getting new ones, and how do you do that? So it's specifically focusing on who it is that you have an impact with and for. Suppliers, supplier review, always looking at who is it that we're paying money to, and do we need to review that, and is that something that we need to change? Workflow and operations, and again, have we got the smooth workflow? And we do a lot of work around sort of mapping out from beginning to end the whole process within the organisation, and is it as efficient as it possibly could be? And that's a whole new workshop in itself. Market, looking at your market, is it stagnant? Is it growing? Is it changing? And we always say to new entrepreneurs, always look at the market and don't set a business up in a declining market, something that's not growing. So if you've got a good idea and a good product or service in a growing market, then that's the key. So again, thinking about your markets and how do you know whether that market is declining or not. Who are the competition? Again, a little bit more research involved in who are the competition, what are their strengths and weaknesses, and once you're that's existing competition, but how easy is it for somebody to come into your space as well and do what you do and do it better and cheaper and more effective. So thinking about the competition, and there is a saying is that you know, don't compete against your competitors on their strengths. Compete against their weaknesses and identify what your strengths are. And there's something around, I don't know if anybody, I'm not going to go into it today, but there's something called blue ocean strategy, a red ocean strategy, and I might touch upon that again at some point, but I'm not doing that today. But again, that's about contested, developing products and services in a contested space or an uncontested. That's creating new markets, which is the blue ocean strategy type of thing. But I won't go into that. So products, so looking at what you've got, what are you currently providing, developing, and is it fit for purpose now? And do you need to look at developing and creating new products and services? And again, there's tools that enable you to identify where your products or services are on the growth map and whether they're actually in decline or not. So again, thinking about your products and services. Sales process, how do you close the deal to some extent? How do you get the money in? The process there, which ties in obviously with your marketing strategy. And again, there's something called a sales hopper, isn't there, where you know how many qualified leads do you need at the top to convert at the bottom. So it's understanding what our processes is, who closes the deal, if you like, that's very old sales, and we're not into that. There's the old sales processes, but it's still about, you know, at some point you've got to ask for the business and get the money in, whether that's directly from customers or whether it's from donors or from the government or getting grants. So at some point it's how do we actually get the revenue in? And then stakeholders, who are your stakeholders? I'm going to do a little bit today on stakeholder analysis and management. So it's I just saw something come in then, I missed it, but hopefully if somebody can let me know what that said at some point. So it's again, your stakeholders, it's who they are, what their role is, and we'll talk about the power and influence and interest grid that I'll talk about in a second. And innovation, where do the new ideas come from? You know, our culture is an innovative culture, and we always talk about that when we do the employee engagement surveys around. Are people encouraged to come up with ideas, or are they not, as the case may be? So there's 4 different types of culture when it comes to innovation, but we absolutely encourage people to come up with new ideas, and that's to some extent where we improve processes and systems and products and services. So thinking about that. And technology, you know, are we embracing technology that's coming along, and it may be getting more effective, cheaper, easier to install, for example? So what technology have we got, and is it fit for purpose, and do we need to think about what's going to help us? And any others, really, if there's any other areas of planning that's specific to yourself. That's just a list of things that I've been involved in the past when I've been working with some of the companies that I have worked with. It's just useful as a bit of a checklist. So that's planning. So again, thinking about which of the priorities would be for yourself. And generally, when I ask people when I'm sort of working with businesses, well, what are your top 3 or 4 priorities right now? And there's a little tool I'll use on the next sessions that we can focus right in on. Having identified your top 3 or 4 priorities, how do you then put some actions together, some real actions to make sure that they're identified? So when I'm working with clients, I might spend a couple of hours with them initially. We'll have a conversation, and right at the very end, they'll always say, right, that's great, but what now are your top 3 or 4 priorities? And once we've listed them, it's right, how are we going to find the solutions for those? Are they internally, or can somebody else, do you need somebody else to come in and help you with those? So that's and again, looking at so we've got sort of the priorities, so we know what we're trying to achieve, but what might be the challenges that'll stop you from hitting your priorities and growing the business? So, and again, just a few questions. How do you know what currently the challenges are? So we're always looking externally and doing some research and looking what's happening within our marketplace, within our local area. And are the internal factors or external factors that might be the challenges? So it's about how we keep informed, looking at constantly in the press, the news, what's happening locally. So it's just keeping up abreast of what's happening. I get quite a few emails from various free emails from various sources, which I always find quite useful. I'll save up should I need it for presentations and things. So it's where do you get that information from, and have you got the solutions? So identifying what your challenges are specifically, are the solutions there. Were there a couple of questions that came up while I just have a drink?
No, I think it was just somebody checking that we're sharing the slides afterwards, which we will do, and we can also send out a link to the recording as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, I don't always see them when they come up, but that's fine. I appreciate that. Thank you. So yeah, potential challenges might be. Just listing a few, and again, there's a lot on the slide, but hopefully you'll find it quite useful. Yeah, from a social enterprise perspective, balancing mission and income generation, access to funding, market competition and awareness. So again, looking back at that competition, getting talent in, being able to attract the right sorts of people, any legal and regulatory challenges, impact reporting. So you've got the data they get for the impact that you're having, and that might be a challenge, collecting that information in particular. Scaling and growth challenges. So you've got that ambition to grow, but we're just struggling. So what's the next thing that we need to do? Stakeholder perception and trust. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about that. Supply chain, operational efficiencies. So some of this is similar to the things that we talked about previously, but there might be specific challenges for yourselves. And developing partnerships with others, absolutely key in many respects, and certainly for social enterprises to develop those partnerships. And again, changing policy and economic environments. I touched upon it earlier on, but some of the things that happen within the budget specifically, and then you've got the workers' rights coming in. So what impact does that have? And it's understanding what was going to happen. How do we overcome that, or how do we embrace that and make sure that we've got everything in place to overcome and to, as I said, to embrace. So those potentially might be the challenges. But there's always opportunities out there as well. So it's, yeah, we've got our challenges, but let's see if we can spot some opportunities. And again, I've just listed a few here. They might be relevant or not, as the case may be, to yourselves. Growing demand for ethical products, absolutely. So is that an opportunity for us to commercialize something around the ethical product side of things? Access to impact investment and social financing, looking at what's out there, particularly in a local area. I'm in Lancashire, and we have I think still within every area there's a local enterprise partnership. I'm not sure whether under the new government whether that will change slightly or just come under a different guise. But you've got the local enterprise partnerships, and under that there's business support elements and social enterprise support elements. So it's just tapping into that as well. What are they providing that we can tap into, and particularly investments. And again, ecosystem accelerator programs, co-worker spaces. Who else can we partner with? And there are definitely some in York. I did some work a couple of weeks ago with some of the undergrad students who were thinking of setting businesses up, and we talked about co-worker spaces and accelerator programs that are available to help people. So definitely worth exploring those. Technology, so embracing technology to help you to scale. Corporate social responsibility, and that's helping other organisations to become more corporate social, have that social responsibility, and working with them in partnership. And it may be that potential fee-earning relationship that you could have there. Government support and public-private partnerships. Address social and enterprise gaps. Conscious and skilled talent, and I'll do something on a movement, something called the B Corp movement that you might be familiar with. I've got to put a couple of slides in today on that, which I think is quite useful. And the idea on that is that certainly the millenniums and Gen Zs are more focused on companies like who are part of the B Corp movement, who are doing things right ethically for the local economy, for the local community, for the employees, for suppliers, for the environment. So, and again, it's back to that. what is about our organisation that makes us attractive to people, to the candidates that we want to attract. So that's an interesting one, but I'll just do a little bit on B Corp. You may have heard of that, but I'll just touch upon that. The opportunity for recycling, the circular economy as they call it, so recycle massive. So what are the opportunities that there might be there? Leveraging social media for storytelling and brand building. Yeah, again, we've got some social media experts in the room, but fully utilizing the online platforms to develop your brand and to get your message across in the right way. Looking at new markets, again, looking at pivoting or specifically what markets that we're not currently in, but we could be based on the products and services that we're developing. Influencing policy and advocacy, so you've got the opportunity to influence things, hopefully in many ways, and exploiting your reputation. And exploiting the nicest possible way. What's your reputation currently, and how do you enhance and make sure that you can exploit that as best you can? And then thinking about your networks and your contacts and exploring those, whether that's physical networks, going into a room and talking to people, or online networks, both equally as effective. So it's thinking about current opportunities. So what are you not doing that you could be potentially? What might you have not discovered yet? So again, that's look at research potentially, and what identifies might there be? What opportunities might there be for you to identify, and how can you do that? So it's keeping an eye on for what's happening within your own sphere, the macro and the micro environment that you operate in. I mentioned B Corp. You may be familiar with it. It's a movement that came over from America, and I'm looking on the website. I think there's about 3,200 companies in the UK are now B Corp accredited or known to be a B Corp company, and you can use that logo there. Is anybody familiar with B Corp?
I am.
Yes. Yeah,
we've got a few thumbs up popping up across the screen.
Yeah, anybody looked at it as an option?
Yeah, but it seems like the sort of the certification process is very time consuming, and for a really small business, it doesn't seem feasible.
I think you're right as well. I think you're right. It's there's about 3,200. I know a couple of organisations that I've worked with in the past who have now got it, and as you say, it's not an easy process, and perhaps it shouldn't be, and it's definitely not for everybody. But I like it because it's that framework, and I think it's looking at the framework, and you don't necessarily need to go through the accreditation. And I used to be an Investors in People advisor and assessor at one point, and obviously IIP is still going, but it's not so much about we're going to become an Investors in People company, although there are benefits of doing that. It's the process, and it's the templates or the framework, which I think is quite useful. Same with work-life balance, and those types of really effective processes. But you don't necessarily need to have the accreditation. But it's good to look at least look at the process. So you're right. It's not that easy to get. But company I was working with, it took them a long time, and as you say, it probably cost them as well. But they really do see the benefits. So just a quick one for people who may not be aware of it. It's a non-profit network transforming the global economy to benefit all people, communities and the planet, which is absolutely admirable. I've just picked this off the website, so that's sort of the process to some extent. And it's to me, it's about doing the right things for your employees, for your suppliers, the community, the environment, and the company I mentioned. I think they were putting solar panels and they had a farm, so they were putting wind turbines on and various things. So. And you do have to do a lot to prove that you are a B Corp organisation, providing lots and lots of evidence. So that's just a little bit on the template side of it. And it's really, this is the bit that I'm quite interested in. It's the 5 impact areas. And this is sort of the model, really. So if you get this right, then it's phenomenal. So again, governance, so look at your ethics, financial information disclosure, whistleblowing policy, for example, mission and vision and engagement. So what do you do as an organisation to ensure your governance, workers, you know, the people who work for you, you've got that potential career development, health and well-being, tracking satisfaction and engagement. So that's the whole employee engagement piece around that. And the environment, I mentioned that before, doing the right thing for the environment, the community, civil engagement and giving, diversity, equity and inclusion, supply chain management, and then customers, you know, dealing with customer feedback, dealing with complaints, how do you look after your customers, how do you get new customers, that sort of thing. The company I was talking about, by the way, was a company called the Wellbeing Farm, based over our way near Blackburn, and they're a wedding venue, and I think they're the first wedding venue in the UK to be B Corp accredited, and they actually put events on to promote the benefits of B Corp. But and they found it fantastic. They worked really hard at that. So yeah, I just thought as a framework, I thought I was quite interested in whether that creates any potential commercial opportunities going through that process. Just thought that might be quite interesting. These are some of the companies that are on B Corp. If you go to the B Corp website, it actually lists all the companies there are. You've got to try to do a bit of navigating to find it, but you'll see all the different companies. And I just went in alphabetical order and picked some out to give you a bit of an idea. The top one, actually, again, they're over our way. There'll definitely be some over your way as well. A creative agency, and then one or two others doing different things. So that's just to demonstrate that you can. You can see some of the companies that have actually gone through that process, and they're not massive companies, but they've thought that is definitely worthwhile doing. So that's B Corp. We just thought I'd share that with you.
We've just got a comment, Mike. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah.
Sarah's just commented that the Good Business Charter covers a little bit of this, and that's very straightforward to accredit and relatively inexpensive. So just in case people aren't aware of the Good Business Charter as a potential option, it might be worth checking that out.
I'm jotting that down. Yeah, I have heard of it before, but it's right. I shall check that out. So thank you for that. Absolutely, and anything we can share is all good. Thank you. Okay, so just quick one in terms of income generation generally, and about how you actually generate income currently. So. Yeah, fundraising, looking at it from a social enterprise perspective, fundraising strategies, attracting investment, commercial activity, so but still whilst maintaining your social mission. Obviously, that's always at the forefront. But how do we currently generate income? So again, I did talk about this last time, so I'll not spend too much time on it, particularly for the people who were there previously. But it's about really how do you get the money in? Gifts, grants, contracts, the open market, commercialisation side of things, social investment, and investment income. So it's thinking, where do we get the income from currently? And where they potentially are the opportunities. So rent from property, for example, dividends, interest on deposits. Let me just go back. I'm not sure if I missed it. No, I didn't. Sorry. Yeah. Interest on deposit and any other assets. So it's thinking about, we're getting grants in, we're getting donors, we're doing fundraising, we're getting the money in, some commercial income potentially also that you might be getting, but it's what other assets could convert, space, get rent from property, as I said, dividends, the things on there. So it's thinking about where else could we potentially generate that income from, thinking about the assets that we've got. And you may already do that. So this was, I picked this up, actually I was on a course just before COVID, 2019, and it was a leadership program for social enterprises, and I was with, there's probably about 10 of us on the program itself. It was a 9-month program, and lots of really good stuff about that on from social enterprise perspective, but also from a commercial also. And this was quite good because this was obviously a circle thinking about, you've got the pie. What percentage of the pie do we get our income from? Donations, sales and trade, others, public contracts, grants and trusts. So it's a nice little diagram to put in what percentage and the actual amount that we get from different sources, and is that likely to be maintained, or do we need to work a little bit more to expand certain things? And I know the commercialisation that's fundamental, because it's difficult to always get lottery funding or European funding, government funding. So it's and through social enterprise networks, so it's quite difficult. But the commercialisation will obviously help with that. So speaking of that, I said that was just a little bit on thinking about where we get the funding from now, where we're likely to get it from in future, but also where the potential gaps might be. So thinking about, right, how do we make money from a commercial perspective? So again, selling products or services to customers or clients, obviously. So the open market includes trading and enterprise activity. So what have we got? What skills, knowledge, expertise within the organisation, and where are the opportunities that we can then sell our services or develop new products? And again, you may be doing this already, but I'll just go through it. So again, education, training, paid for advice. The consultancy side is always an interesting one. Have we got the skills and knowledge to take to be able to monetize what we already do? So it's what have we got that people want? So again, it's identifying where the gaps and where the needs are that you can then fill. So paid for advice, selling publications, retail. I know some of you may do retail. There's charity shops. There are quite a number of charity shops where I live, and they all seem to be doing pretty well. So that's an interesting and another way of generating that income, and trading directly for the organisation's mission can be purely to generate profit. So, and any surplus obviously that you get from commercial activity is unrestricted, unlike some of the funding that might be sought. So why do you need to? So let's ask the question initially. Why do you need to be more commercial? What are the key drivers, and how commercial do you need to be? So thinking about the revenues you get now, what percentage do you need to increase, and where is that coming from? Where's that idea coming from? And if you don't generate more income, what's the implications of that? And are you already trading successfully? So it's thinking about, yes, we need what's the purpose for generating that income? Why do we need to do that? So always that, and again, that's sort of going back to the objectives of the business initially as well. What is it that we're trying to achieve, and how can we be more commercial to ensure that we achieve those goals? So I'll just have a quick drink. So some of the things that you might be thinking of in terms of why you need to adopt the commercial strategies in that, and again, going back to some extent, the challenges that you may be facing. So reduction in other forms of income. So we did the little income diagram previously. So that might be reducing. So we definitely need to be more commercial. Maintain and enhance your social purpose. So by generating more commercial revenue that enable you to fulfill your social purpose. Keep that financial stability, obviously. Help you to scale up. So if that's the mission, that's what you're really looking to do to grow and develop the business, then that's the scaling, to increase the impact that you have within beneficiaries, within your customers, your employees. Again, thinking about the internal stakeholder side of things. So increasing the impact that you have, getting new investment. To some extent, the more you have, the more you can generate. Making sure that you're building new partnerships. Talked a little bit more about that, and empowering your beneficiaries. So by having that extra income, it ensures that you can empower more, get more beneficiaries on board, and empower them more. Market trends, adapting to those. So again, looking at what's happening outside in the marketplace, can we adapt and be agile to that, and more influence. The more you grow. Job security, and again, we talk to, when we're doing the employee engagement service, we talk about to employees about, do you feel secure in your job, And then again, depending what the answer is, we can address that. If they say yes, it's the question: how do you know what's making you think that your job is secure? And it is because of the success of the organisation. They can see that we're getting new orders in, we're employing new people, we're opening up new sites. And it's, you want to work for an organisation that's got a good success rate and is growing and has got the ambition to grow. So it's that growth, so enabling organisations to grow. And success, what is success? And it's identifying that. What does success look like to us as an organisation, to us as people who are running that business as well? And that might even be, the exit strategy. When are we looking to get out? And when we do retire or leave the organisation, what do we want it to look like, and what do we want to get from that? So I think the success question is always an interesting one. What does that look like? So again, thinking about what assets you've currently got that you can exploit or use to be more commercial. So yeah, collecting metrics to demonstrate your success, that things are working, building those relationships, increasing your brand reputation, developing those partners and network, intellectual property. So what have you got? Trademarks, design rights, patents, anything in there that will help you, that you can utilize. Innovation, use of your talented people. Again, the business model that you've got as well. Does that work? B2C, B2B. We sell locally, we sell nationally, we sell overseas. So thinking about the business model also that's an asset that you've currently got. That you can get access to funding, the premises that you can utilize, your beneficiaries, your volunteers. So looking at what have we got, thinking about our assets and our resources, how can we utilize them as much as we possibly can. And AI, ChatGPT. I'm sure you all use ChatGPT. If you don't, you should. It's quite useful. Again, just to generate ideas, just to get the mind going, and just to think of, just helps you to create. You've got a bit of an idea. You ask the right question, it gives you some answers, and that helps you to move things forward. So I'm a big fan of ChatGPT and AI, and I talk to the students as well at the uni, that we are aware of that it's out there, and it's useful in some regards. Never never submit an assignment that's been done by ChatGPT, because we'll find that out. But it's useful to generate ideas. So again, utilizing technology as an asset. Thinking about the skills, knowledge, expertise of the people that you've got, and how you know that, passions, hobbies, interests, the contacts that they've got, the networks, the influence that they may have in the spheres of their work, and what's their ambitions. Having that conversation with your people around what are their ambitions, what would they like to do, and how can they help you to generate. The more involvement people have, and we find that with the employee engagement surveys that we do, that the more you involve people, particularly on things that are relevant to them and that affect their job, the better it is, and the more productivity, the more motivation, the happiness factor. People are happier if they feel as though their work is definitely generating, is helping the organisation to be successful. This is good. The program that I was on previously, I thought this was a particularly good slide that we worked on. And again, it's about understanding the strengths that you've got now. So talked previously a little bit about your brand and reputation, and how do you know what your brand and reputation representing out there in social media, on the online, and wherever people see the brand, what do they think when they see your brand? So products and services, thinking about what you've already got, and can you market those better, differently to a new market? Can you generate new products and service on the back of that? People, we've talked about the business model. Is it effective? Contacts and networks, customers and suppliers, your processes, again, and intellectual property. So I think that's quite a powerful slide as a sort of a guide. Let's have a look at each one of these areas to see whether we can utilize what we've already got to help us to be more commercial, to help us to be more efficient in what we do. So, excuse me. So, in terms of identifying where the gaps might be and the opportunities, it is to some extent about research, and I won't go into research too much, but I'm sure you've done some in the past. Particularly, you've gone down the academic route where you've got your primary research and you've got your secondary research. So, secondary research, that's desk research where you're having a look and finding out what's already out there. Of course, the key is what is it that I need to find? What am I looking for? And then to do some desk or secondary research to find out what's already out there in terms of the markets, the products. Interesting. I don't know if anybody's familiar with futurologists. There's such a thing as futurologists, and I tend to follow a chap called Tom Cheesewright. And he's just come back on the scene, funny enough, a couple of days ago. He's been away for a year, but he's come back on the scene. And their sort of remit is to what's coming in future. What are they predicting the markets and the products that we'll be using or looking to sell in future? So, to keep an eye on what their experts, these guys who are looking to the future, and is there an indication of things that we can utilize from them? So market research, so again, and primary research is the stuff you do yourself out in a clipboard in the center of York, or you do surveys or focus groups, pilot groups, and just to asking the questions. And I always think when you're doing research, primary research in particular, be aware of what you want to know, and then the questions fall around that. So it's what are we trying to find out, and then we can design our survey or our questions around what we want to find out. Stakeholder involvement, asking the stakeholders potentially where there may be some gaps and bouncing a few ideas around with them. Looking at trends, what's happening, within your own sector, you'll know yourself. Where are the trends and what the trends likely to be? Problem solving and looking at idea generation, focusing on that gap analysis again, partnership, field observations, competitor analysis, again, part of the marketing, who are the competitors and potentially who may come into your space, as I mentioned previously, and keeping an eye on social media, what's happening, but obviously taking into account, is it false news or is it true news? But keep an eye on that. And then networking, that you go out and speak to people and pitching some ideas and bouncing some ideas around people who may not necessarily be aware of what you do, but could provide some useful guidance and support. I think I put this slide up previously. I really like this slide, and I use it a lot, particularly with new entrepreneurs who are thinking of setting businesses up. And we go through the whole process of why would you set a business up? What are you good at? What do you like doing? What are your interests, hobbies? Back to that again. But what's your purpose? And it's always a really good question. What's the purpose of the business? And I think this is a really good one. Ikigai, Japanese concept for reason for being. And again, you've got, you do stuff that you love, you do stuff that what the world needs, what you can be paid for, what you're good at. And then it goes into, it's about the mission, vocation, profession, and some of the pros and cons of going down a particular route. So as it says there, for example, if it's what the world needs and it's your mission and your vocation, it's excitement and complexity, but sense of uncertainty. It may be a bit, work going into those market spaces might be a bit uncertain. So that's and I won't go through each one of them, but it's just quite a nice little one in terms of what is the purpose? Why do we do what we do? And that's just reminded me again. I think we might have talked previously about something called the Golden Circle, which is a chap called Simon Sinek. If you haven't seen the TED Talk, it's quite an old one now, but it's definitely worth looking at. And that's not so much about what we do; it's why we do it, the purpose. And people are more interested in why you do certain things than what you do. And it's that you go to a networking event and somebody says, "Oh, what do you do?" And it's that what comes next is important and can drive that engagement. So if you've not seen that, definitely a TED Talk, well worth watching. Get a chap called Simon Sinek, Sinek, I think it is. It's called the Golden Circle. It's about the why you do things and not what you do, and that's important. I think this Ikigai is quite important as well in terms of setting the scene for that. I think somebody's just put the link up. Is that right? If you have, that's great. Thank you for that. So again, thinking about, so when you go to your commercialization, the sort of the caveat is to make sure that it's still in line with what you're about, your purpose. So it's about that brand again. So yeah, we do what we do, but all of a sudden we're now becoming more commercial, and not so much hard-nosed business, but a little bit more commercial. So it's making sure that when you do that, it doesn't necessarily affect your brand reputation. So that the product, what you deliver, the product and service quality is still there. You're still delivering a high level of customer service. The ethical practice absolutely should still be there. And it's interesting. There's another model, and it was called. It was called PEST initially, political, environment, social, technological. Then it became PESTIL. And now it's steeple, because they've added another E on, and I'm not doing that today. I might do that another session, and that's looking at the external environment. So it's interesting. It was what's called pestle. Now it's steeple, and they've added another E onto that, and the other E is ethical. So it's looking at the external environment and the ethical practices that are taking place that may affect the way you run your business. So I think that's really powerful, and I think that's the right thing to do. So about ethical practices, transparency and trustworthiness, absolutely. And crisis management, that you can respond to crisis management when you need to, and that's a whole new sphere. Social responsibility, you're keeping that. Excuse me. The online presence and reviews, because people can be quite brutal online, can't they? So it's about the commercialization, still maintaining your brand reputation, what the competitive landscape looks like, media coverage. And when we talk about stakeholders, media is certainly a stakeholder in everybody's business. Employee behavior. So back to the ethical side. And again, I'm not talking today too much about mission, vision and values, but when we talk about values within an organization that's sitting behind the values or the behaviors that are expected within an organization, so that people are clear on what's expected, and certainly what's not expected, what's not tolerated, the type of behavior that's not tolerated. And again, that would definitely affect your brand reputation if employees are not behaving in the way that you would want them to do based on your values. And that's why it's important to have a good set of values that people are aware of. And as I said, the behaviour that sit behind that, then there's no excuse. Changes in leadership. That again, there may be differences in people's views on the social aspect side of things, particularly become more commercial, and global trends and events, what's happening out there that could affect the way that you run the bit. There's lots happening in the world today. I'm not going to go into that, but it's again just thinking about that from your own particular brand and how that might affect you. And culture, absolutely. Do a lot of work around culture, and it's thinking about your own culture. And we always ask the question, excuse me, within the surveys, and I do it with some of the MBA students that we work with as well, particularly on the human resource management side of things. And it's around, and I can do some stuff on culture actually. There's a really nice something called a culture model canvas that makes you look specifically at your own culture. And what your ideal culture should look like, and how you would design that. It's pretty powerful. So I might introduce that at one of the other sessions. It is really good stuff. But again, culture, and we'll say to people, name 3 words that describe the culture of your organization. And if you think about that now, what 3 words would you use to describe your organization's culture? We did some work with a local organisation, don't know, small. They employed about 60 people, and we were feeding the results back of their employee engagement survey last week, and they had 80 different words to describe culture. And then we just picked the top 3, sorry, the top 8. And then we put them on a slide and feed those back to the management team. And the number 1 for them was challenging. That was the number 1 that was the word that was said the most, was challenging, and it didn't mean challenging necessarily in a bad way, but it was a challenging environment in terms of people are they're tested. It's not boring necessarily. There's always things that they can be doing, and people like to be challenged and problem solve. So that was interesting. So again, it's how you interpret that, but looking at culture, 3 words to describe the culture of your organisation, brings up some really interesting comments. Oh, so yeah. Oh, it was a bit of a delay on that. I'll just do a little bit, if that's okay, on stakeholders, because I think that's important again when you're planning. Who is it that you've got around you, and what influence do they have? So there's a little bit of a model that I'll share with you, if that's okay. If you've done this previously, I do apologise, but I do think it's quite important to understand who our stakeholders are and how we can utilise them. In terms of how we move forward. So quick Institute of Leadership and Management. Stakeholders, anyone with an interest in an organisation, individuals, groups or organisations are affected by the activity of the organisation. So who have got a stake in the business, and obviously that's where stakeholder comes from. That's quite a nice little diagram in terms of potentially who stakeholders could be within your organisation. And I'll just drill down a little bit more on that. So again, your internal stakeholders, you've got internal and external. There will be potentially, and there may be a few more as well, will be your employees, everybody you employ, your customers, your suppliers, your shareholders, your investors. So people who have got an internal stake within the organisation. Externally, others, your competition, the media, the government, consumer groups, donors, volunteers, trade associations, regulatory bodies. So people who are outside don't necessarily affect the way you operate, but are definitely still interested in what you do as an organisation. So, and the key really is it's about managing your stakeholders. So it's about identifying who they are, analysing the impact they have and the influence they have, and I'll do a little bit on that, monitoring that relationship, is that working, and then engaging with them. And there's a whole piece around how do we engage our stakeholders for mutual benefit, and that's the crucial bit, for mutual benefit. So we've got our internal and our external stakeholders, then looking at really who are our primary and secondary stakeholders. So a combination of that. So your primary stakeholders, those who define the organisation, are vital to its continued existence. Again, your employees, your shareholders, your investors, your customers, suppliers. So it's the people you absolutely need to keep the business going and to help the business grow. So those are your primary stakeholders. Excuse me. And then you've got your secondary stakeholders, have an indirect impact on the organisation and still have a stake in how it operates. So again, just a basic list. These could be obviously central government, absolutely, again, a stake in everybody from a tax perspective, if nothing else. Central government, legal, local government, legal bodies, regulatory bodies, if you're governed by regulation, the media, advocacy groups, absolutely. And obviously government can pass legislation that affects the way you do things. Legal bodies, that should be, enforces the regulation that there is out there. Media reports, so the media and the press are there to report on any news that's created. And social groups may pressurise you as an organisation or other stakeholders to act in certain ways. So those are the secondary, although they've still got a power, but they're classified as secondary. So we've got internal, external, primary, and secondary. So how do we quantify that? So it's about interest and power, and you may have come across this before as a grid, an interest power grid. So the extent to which a stakeholder cares about the aims and objectives and choices that an organisation makes, and then power, the extent to which a stakeholder is able to influence the organisation, and then there's this power influence grid. So that's Eden, and going back to academia, Eden Ackerman came up with this stakeholder mapping grid, which is quite interesting. So it's the power versus interest grid. So at the bottom, you've got the interest stakeholder, and at the top, you've got the stakeholder power. And the idea is that you categorize and put your stakeholders by name into each of these categories. So the way it would work is that as a interest at the bottom and influence or power going on the upwards. So it's I won't go into too much detail. It's relatively straightforward, but low interest and low power are the least important stakeholders. And again, they might be primary, secondary. They're probably not going to be primary. They might be secondary, and they might be internal, for example. So information via general communications, newsletters. So this is really how you interact and how you engage with the stakeholders, dependent upon where they sit within the grid. So your key players at the top, focus efforts on this group, involve governments, decision making, engage and consult regularly. So they're high power and high influence. I've got some examples of that. So a high interest, these are the, again, you might classify as key stakeholders. So for a public agency, government ministers, yeah, clearly. Non-profit, these are your trustees and your major donors. So they've got high interest and high influence and high power within your organisation. And for a business, it might just be your investors. So they're interested in how you are performing, and they've also may have an influence in the way that you do operate on a day-to-day basis. So high interest, high power. High interest, low power, you know, the majority of organisations employees, so they're interested, but as an individual, they may not have the power to influence decisions. As a group, they might, but individually, not necessarily. So they will gain power by external means, just as government and court. So if, for example, they've got an individual might have low power, but if they take it to a tribunal, for example, then they're involving other stakeholders who may have that higher power. So just to clarify that a little bit, residents in an area where the development is to be built, not much power, but individually could lobby. So if there's a building work going on and it's people are against that or against a particular project, individually might not be able to do anything, but together they can form and become much more high power. Low interest, high power, government and professional bodies, it could levy fines. So they've got a low interest in terms of how you run the business, but high power should anything they need to intervene in any way. Similarly, a builder will need to get planning permission. Low interest in the business, but would need to get high power in terms of bringing other people in to ensure that they can get that planning permission, for example. A low interest, low power, less important contractors and potential employees and prospective customers to a retail part. We're talking about the sort of a building scheme there where they've got low interest and low power. They're not influencing it, and they're not that interested at that particular moment in time. So hopefully that explains it a little bit more. And again, the idea is that on the interest power grid, you keep satisfied, monitor, manage closely, or keep informed. So by doing the analysis, it helps really to identify how you can engage and the potential to work with your stakeholders. So in terms of mapping that, you know, list all your stakeholders. I always suggest list all your stakeholders. And I did some work with a social enterprise probably sometime last year, and we did an exercise where we listed, and there was about 100. It was a lot of stakeholders within their own organisation. Identify internal and external. Identify primary and secondary, and how can they help you, and how can you help them. And it's that collaborative approach. And it may be that you undertake surveys to identify your stakeholders a little bit more. So you've identified a stakeholder. Let's find out a bit more about them so that we know sufficiently to be able to engage with them as best we possibly can. So yeah, it may be that you do need to do a little bit of research to find out a little bit more. And actually, by doing the grid, that grid there, put it up again. I'm putting people into the group, putting people or groups into the different sectors. It just helps you to analyse how you can effectively manage and work with your stakeholders. Just a quick one in terms of, yes, there might be challenges and there might be conflicts of interest within stakeholder relationships. And just an example here. So a department store, for example, has been losing profits for the last 3 years. And the sales team have not received their bonus. They're not going to receive a bonus this year. So as an organisation, it's that dilemma. What do we do? Do we pay the sales team bonus? Or, because we don't want to lose them, and actually things might pick up, so we want to retain our talent, or we don't want them to leave because they're not getting the bonus, or do we satisfy our stakeholders and our investors to make sure that they're getting a return on their investment? So so that you can see whether the different groups of stakeholders have got different sort of needs, and it's about us to manage that to some extent. So just interesting in terms of how you manage your different stakeholders. But I think by doing the grid and working that out, it really helps to identify power influence on that. So yeah, identify internal, external, power and influence, secondary and primary, and who are and identifying who your strongest collaborations are with and how that can be. Excuse me. So stakeholder, potential customers, beneficiaries, community members, industry experts, so gathering information, preferences, so speaking and building a relationship up with your stakeholders as best you can. So there's another model actually, and I'll just share this with you. I'll just have another drink. So this is called Prick Framework, and it's just another model. I'm not going to go to it in too great a detail, but it's a process for sort of managing and engaging stakeholders, and it talks about sort of analysing and planning, about strengthening engagement capabilities, so designing the engagement process. So this is about how a process for engaging and identifying your stakeholders. Active review, about feeding information back and then thinking strategically within your stakeholders. So it's quite an interesting, but I might do a little bit more on that, but worth having a look at. If you're interested in the whole stakeholder management engagement, that's a really good framework to explore a little bit more, just to help you to do that. I like a lot of things. There's models in the past that have worked through this and actually work quite well. So how do you measure your stakeholder relationships? Just a quick one on that. Measuring your stakeholder relationships. Stakeholder satisfaction surveys. Do you ask them? Do you send surveys out? Are you happy with our relationship? Are we meeting your expectations? Again, thinking about the power influence grid. Who do we need to ask and what do we need to ask them? Net Promoter Score, I talk about this quite a lot, and again, you may be familiar with that. It's a great metric. And we use it from an employee experience perspective, but also from a customer perspective. The Net Promoter Score being on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being not at all, 10 being absolutely. How likely is it that you would recommend York St John University as a great place to work? Or how would or as a great place to study? We're doing some work with let's use Aviva for example. So I'll just use them as because we've done some work fairly recently with some of the MBA students at Aviva. How on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being not at all, 10 being absolutely, how likely is it that would recommend Aviva as a great place to work? And again, there's a scale of 0 to 10, and depending on what people say, you then work out what your Net Promoter Score might be. And it ranges from sort of minus 100 to plus 100, so it's quite interesting. I won't go into the ins and outs of how it's calculated, but it's a really interesting metric, and it's a national thing, and it's something that you would have a measure on and then look to improve further down the line. So you could do that with your stakeholders. Are they happy? Would they recommend you? Are you a great place to be a customer, a supplier, or just somebody to work with? Engagement metrics. So how engaged are your stakeholders with you? Do you communicate? How do you communicate? Or do you do that on a fairly regular basis? And are you communicating in a way that suits them? What's the quality of the relationship? Again, how you measured that? Do you get feedback on the responsiveness and the value that you're providing and the value that they're providing to yourselves? Yes, the likelihood of recommending, frequency and depth of interactions on the metrics. Responsiveness, and again, shared goal. That's a really good one. Shared goals, understanding what the goals and aims of your stakeholders are, and do they meet your own objectives as well, and the values, understanding the values of stakeholders, and do they match your values also. This is quite a good one. This is again from the course that I went on about 5 years ago, looking at partnerships. So we're talking about stakeholder analysis and identifying who the key stakeholders are, but partners as well. So again, degree of partnership with your stakeholders. So do you coexist? Do you cooperate, coordinate, collaborate, or are you the co-ownership? So again, that's on the slides. I won't go through that in any great detail, but that's really good in terms of identifying who your partners are and what type of relationship you've got with those, and can you exploit that in a little bit more detail as well. So that's a good one. So I'm conscious of time. With about 10 minutes to go, what I want to do really is I just want to do a little bit on business planning, if that's okay. We've talked about goals and aims and challenges and various things. I just want to start the planning process off a little bit more as well, if I can, in the next sort of few minutes. So again, you may be familiar with a SWOT analysis. I'm sure everybody is, and you may have done one fairly recently. But I'm a big fan of the SWOT analysis. I think it's a really good tool, strategic planning model, whatever you call it, to start thinking about where are we and what's going to influence the way we run the business in future. So yeah, it's a simple 2x2 matrix, very similar. You'll have seen the stakeholder influence matrix, very similar to that. It came up in the 60s, so it's been there for quite a long time. A planning tool that helps to set goals and objectives, looking at your internal and your external influences initially on yourselves, and matching opportunities and threats. So it's looking at what's out there, what can we do, and what can we influence, and how do you minimize and avoid some of your weaknesses and your threats. So I'm sure you've done this before, but I would always start off with this as a SWOT analysis. And again, the way you do this, it might be in a facilitated environment where you've got your team together and you're asking the questions: what are we good at, what are we not so good at? And I've got a little template at the end which actually is the questions that you would ask yourself if you were to undertake a SWOT analysis. And I think certainly one of these fairly regularly, really, kick one off, and maybe every 6 months, has our SWOT changed? Are we better at what we didn't used to be so good at, and working through that. So that's a SWOT analysis. Again, just an example of one. Specialized marketing expertise, innovative products and services. So what have we got? What are we good at? Weaknesses: lack of marketing expertise, location of the business, we may not be positioned in a great place. There's no car parking if we're running a retail outlet. There's no car parking nearby, for example. Poor quality goods and services. So that's a fairly honest appraisal of what they're not very good at. And again, what are the opportunities? Developing markets such as the internet, mergers, spotting opportunities. And again, it's good if you do that in more of a brainstorming environment, so you've got lots of people's input into what they feel the opportunities are. And what are the threats? You know, what do we have to watch out for in the next 12 months or so? A new competitor in the home market, price wars. Again, we always talk about what do you price for your products and services, and the old adage is, never compete on price, always compete on adding additional value. Once you start competing on price, it's a downturn, and you'll get to a point where we just can't afford to sell our products and services at that particular price. So looking at what's happening, taxation, again, thinking about the new budget. Are there any threats or opportunities with the new budget? So what's happening externally that's going to influence the way we do things. So, excuse me. Just again at Starbucks, I always ask the students, who would you choose, Starbucks, Costa, or an independent? And it's interesting what people come up with when they want to go for a cup of coffee. But Starbucks have done a SWOT analysis, and again, what are they good at and not so good at? High quality of products and services. Internationally renowned, strong brand. They've definitely got a strong brand. What are they not so good at, or what are potentially the weaknesses? Health effects of consuming Starbucks product, having too much coffee or tea. Future growth is increasingly dependent on the internal segment. So thinking about where the competition is particularly there, dependent on US operating segment. Obviously a United States one. Natural disasters may affect supply. So can they get the supply of the raw ingredients in? And again, thinking about where the threats might be coming from. So SWOT analysis, and that's the template. Excuse me. In terms of, you could follow, use that as a template to follow things through. What do you do well? So ask the question again. It might be facilitated. What is it that we do particularly well? What do our customers say about us, etc. So the template's there. So that's a good one. That's a SWOT analysis. The one that comes straight after that, and I don't know whether you'll have done these or not, I want to do this. I'll finish this off because it's the next bit, and it's quite important, I think, having when now we're into the planning mode, and that's something called TOWS. I don't know if people have worked on a TOWS matrix previously also, but this would come directly after you've done your SWOT analysis. So you've already identified your strengths and your weaknesses. What are you going to do about it? That's great, identifying it, but it's about now putting actions in place to identify what we can specifically do. So bear with me on this. I've got a few examples which might help, but this is a TOWS matrix, and this takes all the information that you've pieced into your SWOT analysis. You might, depending on how much information you've got in your SWOT, you might want to prioritize each one. You might want to pick maybe 3 or 4 strengths, 3 or 4 weaknesses, 3 or 4, etc. And then you can transfer this into what we call a TOWS matrix. So what this is, it's looking at your strengths and your opportunities, piecing those together, your strengths and your threats. So that's applying the strengths to mitigate any threats that you might have. Looking at your weaknesses and your opportunities, and then your weaknesses and your threats. So that's the crucial bit. What's the weaknesses and what's going to affect the way we run the business? So again, bear with me. So just give you an idea. Again, it's put into a matrix. So you've got your strengths and opportunities. So how can you use your strengths to take advantage of the opportunities? Strengths and threats. How can you use your strengths to minimize the threats? How can you take your advantage of your opportunities to reduce your weaknesses and weaknesses and threats? Hopefully you're still with me. How can you reduce your weaknesses to avoid your threats? And I've got a few examples here which hopefully will help. So I've only got 4 minutes to go, so I'll blast through this. Again, we'll send the slides out before the next session, so hopefully that'll make sense. So this particular organisation, they've listed down the side, they've listed their opportunities and the threats, and across the top, the strengths and the weaknesses. And as you can see, what they've got, existing brand is a strength, existing customer base, etc. And so what they want to do is leverage strengths to maximize opportunities, and that's the attacking strategy. So let's look at what we're good at and what the opportunities are, and let's make sure that we can fulfill those. So that's how you would sort of piece this together. Hopefully you can see that. So that again, a particular organization have put in again, across the top, they prioritize strengths and opportunities. Down the side, they prioritize weaknesses, opportunities and threats. And in the center, the actions that they're going to take. So they're going to open, so this particular one, strong local brand, local customer base, and they're open 7 days a week. The opportunities are, let's have a look. Yeah, agreement with local employer to provide eye examinations. This is an optician. So again, hopefully on the slides you'll see that I've just a couple more to do, and then we'll close. But I think it's quite important. I wanted to get this in the SWOT and then the TOWs. Sorry, Anna. Yeah, hopefully I'll see you at the next one. So again, that's another. In fact, I'll close with. That's another one. This is quite a good one. This is a shoe manufacturer, and they've condensed it even further by putting strength one and opportunities one. So, for example, they're a multinational distribution strategy, high customer engagement, but the weaknesses, they've only got one product. So what's how do they match the weaknesses and the opportunities? And they've actually put so weaknesses, if we look at that, the left hand side, so the right hand side, the weaknesses and the opportunities. So W2 is target groups. That's the opportunity to target groups of people, and O3 is untapped markets. So what they're going to do is invest into untapped markets, will increase brand value. They're also going to focus on developing products to cater for up and coming markets. So down the side, they've got what their opportunities are, what the threats are, and across the top, strengths and weaknesses. So they've just it's great. So they're doing the SWOT analysis, picking out the bits of that, and then categorizing it and putting some proper actions together to mitigate any weaknesses and to exploit any opportunity they've got based on what they feel the strengths are and what the weaknesses are. So they're really starting to address that. So I think if you go through the process with the TOWs in mind when you do your SWOT, I think it also helps to put the right information in there. There's a minute to go. I'm going to stop sharing. Then I can see. Phew.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Mike. Does anybody have any questions about the presentation or the stuff that we went through? Now is your chance to ask directly.
Or anything any specific that we've done today, or others that we can pick up on the next couple of sessions.
Feel free to just unmute and shout out if there's anything that you want to flag.
No, just to say really thanks, Mike, and I think just by using illustration of some businesses brings that to life. So that's a bit of a refresher for me, but also some new stuff. So thanks ever so much.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got plenty of new stuff for the next couple of sessions, things that you may not have seen that builds on what we talked about today.
Nothing specific from me, Mike, to say thank you. It's really helpful to see that, and I think we probably all need to go away and do a bit of unpacking of it, but it's really a lot of good detail there, so really helpful. Thank you.
Brilliant. No, thank you for that. And again, we'll send out the slides, and you've got the detail before the next session. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, I will be sending out the slides. I can send out a link to this recording as well, so that you can watch it back if there's anything that you feel like you missed or that you would like to refresh. And the next session is on the 21st of November at the same time, so I hope you can all make it. I'll stop recording now. Let me just do that.